let's talk about the real Star Wars and the battle of dark and light and good and evil, and how this is taking place in our life every single day. If God created everything, why would God create evil? And did God create evil? I used to watch the Star Wars almost every single night for a solid 15 years. I spent outside at night and oftentimes until the sun came up. So I saw a lot of things that were taking place in the skies and in the cosmos, and I truly understand that everything, including the stars and in this universe, is within us. This war is not outside of us. Everything that we see in this universe is within us. So imagine that there was the sun and the moon were once one together, and they were split apart, or you can say that they are still one, and like a battery, a positive and a negative, the light and the shadow. This is your left brain and your right brain. But when you deny one, like the shadow, for example, which much of society does, this is only half the battery, and this blocks your ability to manifest and create in the way that we are meant to. This is what I call spiritual infertility, which is a common theme across all of planet Earth, right? And planet Earth is a mother. She is about fertility and creation. So if we split these up and deny the shadow, now evil thrives in the darkness, but the darkness is not inherently evil at all whatsoever. It simply exists. But this is where evil is formed, when we deny the shadow, and we live in a society that consistently blocks the shadow and denies the shadow and judges the shadow in others. Everything that we see online is what people choose to put light on. This is what they choose to show, and this is what people claim they want to see. People deny their own shadow. They're definitely going to deny the other people's shadow, and you can see that people are judging people for their shadow when they show it, whether they expose it consciously or unconsciously. People will say, oh, I thought that you were such a good person, but now I see that you're not. And it's not that that person's not a good person, it's just that people deny the shadow. They don't like that people have a shadow side, but that's not reality. Reality is not what alone is on the internet or what we see when people have their makeup and hair done and everything's perfect. That's not the truth. The truth is the light. The truth is the sun. And what we keep in the darkness, which is the moon, can become deceptive. So imagine that there's maybe a house, right? Or under a porch or some type of stripping against a wall, and it's constantly wet and rain and mildewy, and there's no sun that reaches this area. Well, eventually, because of the dampness and the lack of light, this bacteria begins to grow, maybe even poisonous gases. Well, now these bacteria and these gases are become evil, because what they do is now they're trying to take you out. They quite literally have the ability to do that, because evil thrives in the darkness. The sunlight won't shine there. So this is what happens when we oppress our emotions and our sensual nature, what is in our subconscious, what many people consider taboo that is actually not taboo. Talking about your feelings and emotions is not taboo. There is power in both the darkness and the light. It is what you do with that power and how you express it. It is also whether or not you express it. That is where the sun comes in. What is in the darkness and the shadow and what we keep hidden needs the sunlight on it. It must be seen, it must be heard, it must be expressed in somehow. That is what the sun resembles as well, is expression, whereas the moon is more introverted. And what happens when we stay in the moon and keep our emotions down and introverted into the moon is they come out like a big villain monster. Imagine in a movie where the big bad villain man is creating in this lab, which is from some wound. The villain's always wounded, right? So they're creating this monster, and now they want to hurt people because they were hurt when they were a child, but many are doing this subconsciously. And what happens when they're working on it and staying in the lab is eventually that monster grows out of the villain's control and even tries hurting the villain, right? Or it will, because this is what happens when we suppress these things. there was once a time that I was at a pool with a woman and her son was also there, and he was maybe 17 or 18, and when she got out of the pool, she had started her cycle, and it was dripping down her leg and onto the floor, or onto the ground. And when we got inside, she just was absolutely beside herself, embarrassed. It really got to her that her son saw that happen. And this is why I'm telling you, as a soul, imagine that the sun and the moon are one. Okay, so it is not good or bad. It is not dark or evil. It is simply nature. Okay, but what happens when we have to put a name on something good or bad? You can't find any truth in that, because it depends on how you receive that. This is all about chemistry. So in this case of the pool, some families might find this taboo. She might find that completely inappropriate that her son saw that. But in another family that does not find this taboo, or maybe the son has a lot of sisters and he's been around that his whole life and she doesn't think that it's weird that he actually saw that. But the thing is we're trying to suppress that part of nature. And what happens when young men and women do not understand the emotions and reproductive center and how to create is this, again, is the spiritual infertility. This causes a lot of problems and a lot of issues. And when we hide down our subconscious desires and needs and wants, right? So it's not that they're bad, it's about understanding how to process them and how to express them appropriately, as opposed to somebody who holds their emotions in, or that knowledge or information in about the menstrual cycle, for example, or anything else. When we try to suppress these subjects and these emotions down, it ends up turning into a bigger monster. Now, this is not the case whatsoever in this story, but only as an example. Imagine now, because he does not fully understand the cycle and what that entails, because I knew somebody when I was a young teen who, this young man believed that a woman could only conceive when she was on her cycle, which is not the truth whatsoever, right? So this is about truly understanding nature and not suppressing this and considering these topics taboo. So imagine that because he maybe suppresses his emotions and doesn't understand the nature of reality, imagine that he is suppressing his emotional needs and only giving into the physical needs. So he gets a girl pregnant, and now this girl, and he doesn't care for her, he doesn't have emotionally like her. This was only a physical thing because his emotions are suppressed, because we all have emotions. So he gets her pregnant, and then he doesn't want to be a father because he doesn't want that responsibility. He doesn't understand the nature of reality, and that having a child and having intimacy with somebody results in commitment on a deeper level other than just in that moment. So now she is to raise a child without the son, and the son is the father. The son is that light and that emotional support. So now that she's in the darkness, her child will not have that son and that father in that child's life. So now it is in the darkness, and now evil has the potential and the ability to find home in that dark space because there is no father there. The son is also the protector. So it is really important that we understand with creation, it requires both the negative and the positive of both sides of the battery. If we are only creating from one side, it can be evil. Evil can grow there regardless, because if the sun is denying the shadow and its emotions and what's hidden and underlying, this is why you see a lot of maybe church and religious or spiritual people, what we would call spiritual narcissists or anything like that, people that deny their shadow and think that they're all high and mighty and they don't need anybody and people only need them type of thing, right? This is where evil thrives, when we are denying either side. Inherently, God is not evil. Inherently, the body that we live on, this planet that we live on, and Earth, is about taking in the dark and expressing it with the light and the sun. The moon is the introversion, the sun is the extroversion. This is how we create. Just like a mother takes a soul from the heavens, right? And produces it and births it here onto earth. This is how we create, but we need both the son and the mother. We need both the father and the mother, the masculine and the feminine, the negative and the positive, to do that in order to create. Healthy expression is not always blasting off on somebody and having a temper. Unhealthy expression is also withholding. It is also holding something within. And again, this can create illnesses and disease and a lot of other issues that will turn into a really big monster. Let me give you another example that is kind of offhand of this in ways we may not recognize that these things are affecting us otherwise. There was once a woman I was giving a facial to, and when I was not working on her arms, but her arm kept doing this type of twitch, and intuitively this would not necessarily be the case for everybody, but in this case I said, do you not get along with your mom? You guys don't talk, do you? You don't have a good relationship? And she said, how would you know that? How did you even put that together? And I said, well, sometimes we are holding things back and it shows up in other ways and in our nervous system in a reaction, one that we cannot control, but we don't realize. Her response was, you mean I have to face my emotions? And it might sound like she was kind of joking, but she really wasn't. She was like, I'm not doing that. That's absolutely terrifying. People do not want to face their shadow. They do not want to face their emotions. This is the emotions you cannot see. This is why a lot of work, so science is supposed to support Mother Nature, right? Not take control of her and deny her. We cannot deny our emotions are real, but we cannot see them. We cannot prove them. This is simply something that we must resolve within ourselves. This is not something that we can resolve for others. So when people will not face their fears, this turns into a monster. It may show up in other ways in the body, but she did tell me that this was affecting her, this twitch, in many other ways. It ended up being a way bigger problem, and she had spent a lot of time in the doctors that they didn't know what it was or what the cause of it was. But we do tend to store a lot of these things in our nervous system, so that is a part of it. But again, there are a lot of reasons, kind of like autoimmune. Your body is fighting itself. It's kind of can be betrayal from others, but also self-betrayal or constantly being shamed and having to defend oneself. There are a lot of ways that our emotions show up in our dream, which is our reality, and also in our physical body. And don't even get me started about the things that are taking place behind closed doors in the darkness. And these things are happening every single day. So what we can do is teach our children how to process these things and express these things healthily. Start this very young so it doesn't grow into a big bad monster. And if they're faced with a big bad monster, then they will understand a healthy boundary, what is theirs and what is the other person's. Okay, so this is how we teach emotional expression, and art is hands down one of the best ways to do that. If it is through clothes, through creation, through writing, but somehow this must be expressed and hopefully turned into something beautiful to share with the world, even if it does look dark. There's a big difference between taking an evil action and feeling darkness. There is a big difference. It is so important to understand the difference between what is ours and what is somebody else's. There's a really big difference. So when we can teach that we are connected to everything that is, but we are not them, and we can only process what is ours. We cannot process somebody else's emotions for them, right? We cannot change other people. We can only make the changes within. We can express this. We can express this through our clothing, or through taking care of pets, or helping other people, elderly people in community, or going out in nature and hiking, and spending time in ways, and of course through other creative adventures and even businesses, in a way that is you turn a negative into a positive. This is healthy emotional expression, but we can only change our negatives into a positive, and that positive becomes a positive for others.